You are listening to Been There, Done That. We present some of the smartest people connected to the business of coffee. People who've succeeded in the tough grind of hospitality by staying ahead of the rest. So join us as we explore the secrets to their success and help you accelerate your business. This show is brought to you by the Coffee Commune, where the coffee community comes to collaborate. Enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Phillip Di Bella and you're listening to another episode of Been There, Done That. In this quarter, we talk all about people and performance and making sure we get the best out of our people. Today, we're going to be talking about retaining your top talent and your top performers, which is something really important. A lot of people spend time recruiting, but how much time do they spend actually retaining their top performers? And today on the show, I've got Lauren Karan from Karan & Co. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Phil.
You're no stranger to this. You've got your own wonderful podcast series as well, which our beautiful producer will make sure that the listeners have access to so they can follow your stuff. Thanks for joining me today to talk all things top performers.
Thanks for having me.
A bit about your background, extensive knowledge of culture, fit market, and mapping sets out, your mapping sets out apart from your peers. I know that you're very hands-on and very strategic in what you do. You embed yourself with businesses and understand the full process of hiring decisions from start to the end and the impact that this has on business. So a very practical and strategic approach to recruitment and finding the right people for the right seats of the bus. Having been on the other side and having worked in a spectrum of roles, you also know what makes a good company. I'm sure you've dealt with a lot of duds and a lot of amazing performers, and we're going to explore that. But over 12 years of experience as a technical and engineering specialist recruiting in the building and civil construction market. You hold a degree in psychology, accreditation in behavioural interviewing and psychometric testing, and you're also certified in organisational coach. How did you do this at such a young age? That's a big resume, Lauren.
I have a commitment to lifelong learning.
I love it. Okay, well, let's get into it. All things top performers. We're all committed here at the Commune. As you know, you're part of our community and a great part of it. And you've worked with clients, community members of ours and clients of yours, of course. And it's something that we talk about. So I'm going to take from the start the importance of retaining people versus hiring the right people, because you've been on both sides of the fence, a very rare skill. Let's demystify for the listeners both the difference. What do we mean when we say retaining good people versus recruiting good people?
The two are very much intertwined, right? So and what a lot of companies don't always realise, but sometimes a hard lesson to learn is putting the work in doing a quality recruitment process leads to better retention outcomes, and we know that. But then so often we're in a position of hiring, I call it hiring out of desperation, or hiring without really understanding what the role requires and jumping to hire, and then it becomes a retention issue. And we know that on average it is at least double a person's salary to replace them by the time you look at loss of time with productivity, having to onboard a new staff member, your other staff having to train them and upskill them. So that's, I guess, in essence, it's like a chicken and egg kind of scenario. Yeah. You've got to get the recruitment process right to improve your retention outcomes as well. But you kind of need a strategy that is different for each. So firstly, you need to know, and we talked about this before, the pain points of your business and the growth goals, and you need to link that with your hiring strategy. If you're not doing that and you're hiring what I call reactively, you're never going to be ensuring that the people you get align with your cafe or company's purpose, mission, vision and goals, right? Yeah. You've got to align that first. And then it becomes a lot easier to retain them because you've already got that part right. And then it's about having the incentives, the culture, the environment, the community to keep the people that you've hired that fit your business engaged and on board.
Yeah, look, well said. So you've mystified straight off the bat the chicken and the egg, and it's all about get the right recruitment strategy and the right recruitment processes, and you'll have stronger retention. And a key takeaway there for me that I've talked about in 23 years of business is, and it's not always easy because of resources and lack of them, but hire when you don't need people because then you've got that luxury of time and you've got that luxury of non-desperation. We see that a lot. I was dealing with a cafe last week that their chef has suddenly resigned and 24 hours later their other chef has resigned, and now they're in a strategy, now they're pushing crap uphill trying to replace 2 people ASAP, where they were running too lean. So you got 2 chefs, maybe it's 2 chefs and an apprentice, or it's 3 chefs. I know it's a lot dearer, but then you've got that flexibility of proactive of employment. And it's not just for chefs, obviously in hospitality, this goes for all business, is making sure that you've got that strategy. So key takeaway for me there is recruitment first, recruit right. And the second one is don't try and avoid those recruiting in desperation moments. You know, hospitality industry, it's highly competitive and transient, especially at the moment. And, you know, one of the key differentiators between successful and unsuccessful one is the quality of staff. Talk us through that, you know, talk us through firstly how, because it's not just hospitality, construction's faced with the same thing. You know, what are some of the tips and tricks in hiring at a point of time where it's highly competitive and transient at the moment?
One of the things you said before is the first one, always be hiring. You should always be hiring and always on the lookout for great talent and know where your great talent comes from as well. So employee referrals can be great depending on the employee and their performance and the type of calibre of the person that they're referring. But constantly having a talent pool of people that you're speaking to and always be hiring. That's definitely the first one. The second thing when you're looking at hiring is having a really robust process. So nailing down exactly what you do to get to the right person is really key. Understand your business strategy. So the key skills at the moment, obviously you've got hospitality is always going to be customer service. You know, people are going to come back to a cafe that's got great customer service and delivery, right? So if you're looking at, you've got to look back on a much more broad lens and kind of go, I know customer service, but we need speed of delivery as well, and we need a quality product. So going almost with a really strategic lens before you get to hiring the person, I think is really important. And then once you're narrowing down on those core skills, don't be afraid to bring in, like, personality profiling can be a couple of $100, right?
I'm a big fan.
It doesn't have to be expensive. I think people get scared and go, oh, that's only for certain roles. No, you actually need to know the person you're getting. Anyone in your business.
Especially if they're dealing with customers.
If they're dealing with customers. If they are driven by, if they are naturally a people person and they are customer service focused and they've got high drive, they're going to do well in hospitality. You already know that. You know that they're going to have speed on their side. They want to please the customer. What does that mean? They're going to make sure that the quality's there. They're going to make sure that they ensure that person has a positive experience. They then refer more people and it helps grow your business. But I think sometimes we overcomplicate it, and really it does come down to understanding those fundamentals of what you need for your business to grow and ensuring you're hiring that in a really targeted way. Another thing is asking, instead of would, should or could, ask them what they've done. So this is one I say to clients all the time. An old adage used to be, tell me your strengths. Doesn't even matter. I could tell you my strength is numbers and it could be a complete fallacy. I could be really shit at numbers. So I could tell you that, but if you asked me where, you know, I could demonstrate that, then it's going to be harder. So you can ask them questions like, tell me about a time you've had an unhappy customer with an order. What did you do? And you start to see how they tell me about a time where the kitchen was behind and you've had 3 customer complaints. What did you do? Putting them in those scenarios of providing you examples of where they've acted under pressure is really good, because you're not dealing with would, coulds or shoulds, because guess what? Woulds, coulds and shoulds aren't what drives business performance. It's what they've done. So just tweaking things a little bit, adding some psychometrics, you only need 3. With our clients, we only really oftentimes narrow it down to 3 behavioural questions we always ask. And that'll help you sort out who's going to be the right fit versus who's not going to be the right fit.
And the 3 questions in your industry?
So in our industry, a lot of the time it's around leadership and management as well, and also managing stakeholders. So a lot of the times we'll ask, tell me about a time where you've had to manage a staff member who wasn't performing. What would you do? What would you do? Because in the technical side, sometimes they're really strong technically, but it's the leadership and the people performance.
Or the empathy. It might be the empathy.
Or the empathy and how they deal with it. And that's going to be your biggest killer, because all of a sudden, if you're a leader, it's not just about how you perform. It's about your team performs. So that's one of the ones we always asked. And if it's more of a project management role or a person that's sort of, leading a job, we'll ask them about, tell us your process to ensure that you're meeting time, cost and budget. How do you plan and forecast your work? And you get to see, that's more of a specialist role, how they do it. We always ask them to give us examples, and it'll fascinate you. If there's someone that's a really good salesperson but not good at delivery, that's where it will come through.
Out. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I always say resumes says, well, no one ever wrote a shit resume. You just ask everybody, right? They're conscientious, hardworking, they'll perform, they'll turn up every time until they don't turn up. I always used to love saying to people, tell me what I'm going to love about you, what am I going to hate about you, and where do you want to be in 12 months and 3 years? And they were really, really strategic questions. Tell me your best quality, tell me your worst quality, because if I'm comfortable with your worst quality, it shows me how well you know yourself, and it shows me how honest you are. But if I'm comfortable with your worst trait, then, let's go. And also, where do you want to be in 12 months and where do you want to be in 3 years? Gives me some sort of idea into how in control of your life you are, how flippant, especially in hospitality, because it is transient. So there's some tips for the listeners. But, Lauren's got it spot on. It really is about those strategic questions and making sure that you're analysing those answers and are they being authentic, are they not, and giving you examples. Let's talk about retention, right? I'd say to people, retaining people is an art and there is a strategy to it. And not everybody stays in the job for the same reasons. It's not all about money. It's more, they've proven that it's about job security and flexibility than what it is about dollars. So talk us through the fundamentals of retention. Talk us through the things you must get right if you want to. So you've done the recruiting, you've got good processes, you've got good systems, you've recruited the right people for the right seats of the bus. Talk us through, your perspective and your expertise of retention.
One of the first things is going back to the fundamental human need to belong. So when we talk about that, when people leave companies, a lot of the time they leave managers. So they're leaving a place where if they don't feel like they belong, they're not supported by their manager. So you've got to get your leadership right and you've got to get your culture right. And what I mean by that is inclusive, flexibility. Technology and systems is a new one that's coming up in hospitality as a need as well and as a frustration of staff if it's not right. So you need to be having your finger on the pulse. I know a lot of people that do really effective managers that do essentially one-up, one-on-ones. And what I mean by that is that the manager is so across the business that they're talking not just to the people that are reporting to them as the owner, but going in and having a chat to the apprentice. How's it going? How are you feeling about it? What are the issues you see? Really understanding that, because when you work across multiple layers of the business and you make them feel heard, people also want to feel heard. They want to feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves. And that's what will... If it's just down to money, and I was actually talking to a client about this morning, you cannot retain someone on salary alone because they will always be looking for the next big thing. They'll always be looking for the next dollar. The main thing you need to be thinking about is walking the room, knowing your staff, knowing the drivers and the levers of your business from their perspective. And that's the only way that you can start to really build, because it is different with every business. From doing that, you can then build what's going to retain your team, what's important to them, and what are the issues in your business that are causing people to leave.
Yeah, no, well said. And it brings me to a book that I highly recommend to the listeners called Belonging by Owen Eastwood. And I finished it a few weeks ago. And one of the first notes I took on it was that a leader's first role is to protect its people, and the focus should be on what we share with each other versus what divides us.
Correct.
And that the backbone of belonging is to emotionally engage people. In order to emotionally engage them, you need to share your vision. If you're a cafe, what are your targets? How do you measure success? Is it by the amount of customers? Is it by the amount of coffees you sell? Is it by how many people, walk through the door? Is it average spend? Whatever those metrics are, is share that with your team so that they have a sense of belonging. They know what success looks like. But anyone listening, Lauren's hit it on the head with the belonging, and there is a beautiful book about it, like I said, by Owen Eastwood, and I really, recommend it. The other one, which is a good segue, is that, you shouldn't measure yourself against financial outcomes alone, but rather against the mission that you set for yourself and the mission you set for your organisation. We see a lot of people that just, set financial targets, but not everyone buys into those financial targets. You've got to set a mission or a purpose or a goal. I've moved away from talking about values to what do we stand for. And I find that engages our team. It really makes them step up and say, you know what, I believe in standing for this, especially with our advocacy piece and fighting for what's fair in business for small business owners. I see that it engages our staff because they turn up every day and they have a shared purpose of belonging. So bang on, to your point about that. Tell me, what do people get wrong, Lauren, from your experience? And again, you've worked on both sides, of the spectrum when it comes to employment. What do people get wrong when you just look at an organisation and go, geez, you're going to have a lot of turnover because you've got things wrong? What are the common mistakes?
Quite a few. And before I get into that, another book to read is one called Unreasonable Hospitality. I don't know if you've read that.
I haven't.
Brilliant book, because it lines with what you said with what do you stand for. Unreasonable hospitality is basically, they did that. They said, what do we stand for? We want to over deliver.
Fantastic.
And it was it's a really good book, because almost a great segue from what the other book.
Get a hold of that one.
Yeah, really good. So what? Oh gosh, where do I start?
Common mistakes. What are the common mistakes?
Common mistakes. So definitely rushing to hire, and I feel like we were talking about that example before. You know, a couple of chefs might have resigned or left, and there's the panic station set in, and so what they want to do is hire the first available rather than the best available talent. Right, because they think, we just need to get the spot filled, so we'll cut some corners, right? You know, we probably don't have time to do a fully thorough interview, and you know, like there's such a skill shortage that we'll just get who we can get, and surely filling the role quickly is better than filling the role properly. We all kind of know that if you get it wrong, let's use chef as an example, you could have a loyal customer base and then all of a sudden the food's shit.
Yeah.
It's not great.
Yep.
And you've rushed to hire that because you wanted that spot filled. And it's human nature. It's every small business would have made this mistake, let me be clear, where they've rushed to hire and not thought it out, and in doing spending a little bit of more time to find the best person, because they want to feel a reactive need rather than going back to what's the long-term growth prospects of the business and who is the absolute, where do we see ourselves going in 12, 24 months? What type of food? What type of cuisine? Who is, you know, and don't even worry about who applies. Who do I want to steal? I know that sounds brutal, but where do I want to find someone? Where is my ideal chef, and how do I get to them? So building a bit of a strategy to find that. So some of my clients, they're having coffees consistently with key players in the market. They might not move straight away, but they're just trying to nurture those relationships with people, and always be looking as well. You go somewhere and someone's got great customer service in retail or another industry. You have a coffee with them. You say, hey, I got a cafe. Here's my business card. Let's just have a coffee. May lead to nothing, but it's that always hiring, thinking always long term, and not just waiting for that need to come. Yeah. That's certainly one. And then a second mistake that I see people make in the hiring process as well is basically confirmation bias, hiring a whole bunch of people that are the same as themselves. And it's because we like to, you know, go with what's familiar and go with the type of people that we know are like us, but it's the diversity that drives a successful business. You don't want a bunch of people like you. You want a bunch of people that you know are going to lead to growth and align with your strategy, but you don't want a bunch of mini-me's, right? Because you're going to need different things in different roles. So that's a really common one that people don't realise that they do.
Good point, yeah.
And it is something that, you know, the more diverse thought you have, the more other ideas that are going to come through as well, and initiatives and things like that. And probably, like, those would be the main two that I see, the reactive and then not thinking around like continue. Reactive is a really common one that people make a mistake with. And the other one is, I would say, maybe just not interviewing thoroughly because and not trusting your gut. I still believe in gut instinct. Yeah. You may not know what it is, and you've got to probe a bit further, but if something doesn't feel right, let me tell you, in 6 months, you will know what it was that you were doubting. And if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no.
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? I mean, we've all been there. We've all had the hell yeses, and then it was actually a hell no. Yeah. Gary Vee talks about it. He says it really well. He goes, we're all going to make mistakes hiring. The biggest mistake is that we don't get past our own ego and think, no, I don't make mistakes hiring, and therefore I'm going to keep the person. Yep. And he goes, some of my best hiring have been fired straight away. And he goes, and had I not made that decision, I wouldn't have moved forward the way I have, because he says our egos get in the way. So rather than accept that we made a mistake, and that's okay, we keep the people on longer than what they should. And they just, they become a bloody virus within the organisation.
And they become toxic to everyone around them. So nothing kills a high performer than underperformance, because you're always only as good as your lowest performer trauma in the business.
Agreed.
So if you don't deal with that pretty swiftly, then that's going to almost, like I always say, eats businesses from the inside, right?
Yeah. And the other key, which is a good segue to talk about, is the importance of involving all of your team. And I started Di Bella Coffee in 2002 as a one-man band, and then we grew to 130 plus people. And one of the strategies I started to gain momentum on is that the bigger we got, the less I actually made the decision. I used to let the team make the decision. So, key point is for me was always know the vision and the outcomes of the company. Know what you stand for. Know how you're going to measure. For Di Bella, we stood for helping cafe owners make money. That's what we stood for. We measured our success by cups of coffee. So we wanted to be responsible for 5 million cups of coffee per week because everybody could buy into that, whether they roasted coffee, packed it, or the rest of it. And I found that great team members, and everyone used to say what a great team we had, and we did, all started because we knew how we measure. We knew our outcome. We knew what we stood for. We knew how to measure success. But then the big one, the real turning point, was that I let the team hire the staff. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that's empowering your team and absolutely where you need to be, because also another thing that businesses do wrong, and I've seen this before, is the owner or a leader will go in and hire the staff and then just thrust it upon the team. Now, we go back to that discussion around belonging. Nothing buys ownership in a decision or ownership in the business more than involving people in the decision. So if you're just thrusting and hiring staff and you're not involving them, some of my clients will even do things like, and I'm going to swear because it's construction, the dickhead test. So they'll have a couple of drinks with them and see, do I like this person?
Behaviours change pretty quickly.
Yeah. After a couple of drinks, loosening them up and getting them comfortable, can we work together? And it's just a basic thing. I know a lot of clients do that to try and get that sense of camaraderie. And the team members come along. Like, it's a little bit of a meet and greet. And people have walked away not being hired after that. And others have walked away and going, yep, the team's telling you we need to hire that person.
Yeah. So I love that. And, I've got a couple of mates that I've shared this with in business, and especially those that are not in hospitality, because you'll find there's this commonality, what I'm about to say, with hospitality people, is take them out for a coffee or for a meal. And especially if you're not in hospitality, it's a great hiring strategy, right? I call it the attitude test. And what it is how do they treat the wait staff? And people will always comment on me that I'll be mid-sentence and a waiter will come and fill my water or my wine or whatever it is, and I will pause and say thank you. And people pick up on that straight and go, every time they come to serve you or they put a fork in front of you or a plate, you stop and acknowledge them. And I say, because to me that's respect. They're serving me and I'm grateful that they're in service to me. So I will acknowledge that, whereas I'll watch people and it's not funny because some of them are appalling in how they actually treat the wait staff. They drop a napkin and they point to the napkin and get me a new one.
It's a bugbear of mine too.
And it's just that common decency, because I always say, how we treat people, and other people said, I can't remember who it is that talks about how you treat the janitor. I don't know if it was Bill Gates or one of those guys, says, see how people treat the janitor and you'll see pretty quickly, the type of organisation you're working in. It is so important because at the end of the day, that sense of belonging comes from spirit. It comes from people. It comes from emotional connection. And you're not going to have an emotional connection with a person that treats people poorly, right? So whether that's a few drinks at a bar or a pub or whatever it is, or whether it's taking somebody for a coffee, it's actually a very, very, good test for people, for listeners to adopt, is to really, really see how people react in certain situations and when they're up against it. Tell me, wages have never been higher. They keep continuing to go up, and I'm a big advocate. I don't advocate for low wages. I advocate for right wages. I'd love to see hospitality staff on $100,000 a year, but that means a customer's going to pay $10 for a cup of coffee. So in a perfect world, you pay $10 for a coffee, you can pay a barista $100,000. I certainly don't advocate low wages, but it's all in proportion and rational. How important is money and wages to maintaining top performers? Because of course they've got to live too.
Yeah, you've got to keep competitive with wages, which is so hard. And I won't get into it. Our government has a lot to answer to for that with tax and small business, and the amount of pressure that is on a small business within those first few years to try and even get up and make a profit. So I'm not by any means undermining that. I run a small business, so I totally get it. But I think you need to, and this is where it goes back to what you need to look at is paying, if you're hiring the right people, paying them a good wage, but also knowing that you get a good output from that person. So going back to what you said before, what is a good barista? How many coffees is that? Breaking it really down to basics, and then so always knowing how that you're getting your return on investment with staff. Yeah. I mean, it's all nice and fuzzy. We want to have a great environment. We want people to, but at the end of the day, we are also in business to make money. You've got to be commercial. We've got to be commercial.
If you're not making money, you can't hire people.
Correct.
You're no good to anybody broke.
So what you want to look at is having a value proposition where you go, we pay you well. And we believe in paying you well. For that, we don't want to be an average cafe. We want to be exceptional. Yeah. And what that means is a good salary for you, and we're always going to be competitive. But what we ask in return is that I don't want you to comparing yourself to the cafe down the road. We're going to exceed expectations. So I feel like, yes, if you're going to offer good salary, you need to. But in return for that, you then need to go back to the basics and look at what is the output we expect of that salary and hold your staff to account. Because then they realise there's no entitlement here. No one's entitled to anything, despite of what some people may tell you. Yeah. Everything in this country, we are in a land of opportunity in this country.
The harder you work, the luckier you get, right?
Correct. So, and I think it's drilling that into people, and then you will find the right people. If you're paying them a good wage but expecting a good output, you're going to lose some people. You're going to get the people that will leave for an extra $10 an hour or $5 an hour elsewhere, and you're never going to stop that churn. You've got to expect that that's going to be the case, unfortunately. But that's why, again, going back to always be hiring, always keeping on the lookout. And the other thing is looking at where your pipeline is.
Yeah.
If you're not pipelining for losing it, you cannot expect that you're going to keep all of your team. You can pay them well, but, anything can happen.
Yeah. Every industry is different too, of course.
Yeah. So things like the great part is there's so many places to look at for customer service, retail and other areas and other markets and adjacent. I mean, retail's sort of stealing some of the people from hospitality, but, what have you got as a value proposition as well? So don't make it just about money. Pay the wages as well. But what else do you offer? And I think what you've done really well with Coffee Commune is a perfect example. You've created a community. You've created things like, people can come along and do leadership workshops and seminars. People can come and roast their own beans. So that's a great model, but there's no reason other cafes can't do something within their own community. I saw your thing around mothers groups and stuff. Who are you building as a community for your staff as well? Yeah. And don't. As much as, the wages is important and you've got to be competitive, if you're getting your output, you'll still make money. So don't get so caught up in just the wages. Think about,
the return.
I pay good. I pay a high wage, or a decent wage and a fair wage, but it's a high return, and we've got something special here. We've got a community.
No, I love that, and I mean, my ethos in 23 years of business has been the more money you make the business, the more the business pays you.
Yeah.
And it's not just, and then it's the same thing as the more you do for the business, the more the business will do for you. Now, whether that's flexible working hours, whether that's extended holidays, whatever it is, and especially in the baristas. I mean, the baristas don't want 3 people behind a machine to serve a rush hour versus people that will have 2 people on a machine. I can assure you, happy to pay those 2 a lot more if it's only 2 and not 3, because not because they're not worth it or are worth it. In this case, it's the commercial return. If the customer's paying $5.50 or $6 for a coffee, you cannot afford to have 3 baristas on a machine that are earning $40 an hour each.
No.
There's $120 an hour. They won't knock out 120 coffees an hour between the 3 of them in most cases. So, you've got to put that, which means that the wages bill alone is $2 a cup of coffee, and people got to realise that it has to be commercial and it has to be numbers game. So the short answer there is pay people what they're worth. If you've got a barista or you've got a waiter that can wait 10 tables versus somebody who can only wait 2 tables, pay them accordingly, because if they're making you more money, they deserve to get paid more. But also what that really does, Lauren, is it breeds that next aspiring workplace person. It makes people aspiring. I mean, I started in this industry at 14 years old washing dishes, and my brother used to work for my brother in his pizza shop. The arsehole used to pay me $15 a night, not $15 an hour. It was $15 a night for 7 hours work. But he used to say to me, all right, you don't want to be paid $15 a night to wash dishes all your life, do you? So learn how to cook. The moment you learn how to cook, I'm going to pay you $30. I'm going to double your wage. So I used to start learning how to make salads, and I'd start to learn how to prep and cut mushrooms and get things ready for the chef and get things ready for the pizza makers. And then all of a sudden, I'm now on $30. And then he said, well, when you can make pizzas, I'm going to pay you $60 a night, not an hour.
Yeah.
You know, and we're talking, 40 odd years, 30 something years ago. I can't even do my maths, right?
Yeah.
35 years ago. Here we go. I'm 49. But that's the way he did it. Now, look at it now. Forget the numbers. He was always bringing me through the ranks and saying, well, if you're going to upskill yourself and do more for the business, then the business is going to do more for you. And we've lost that along the way.
Yes.
The expectation of people to, crawl, walk, jog, run, sprint. I call them the 2-minute noodles now. We've got people that go from, they've just started crawling and they want to sprint, which segues to my next question. When should you be looking at promoting people within your organisation? Because a lot of people these days, their patience is not what it used to be. I started Di Bella Coffee in 2002. I started working in a coffee roasting house in 1993, 9 years. And I can't say it was the most pleasant place to work, but I learnt what not to do in business. And I would never have achieved what I did and wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't spent 9 years working in an organisation that had so much potential, but got a lot of things wrong. Let's talk about, when do we know when it's time to step up our top performers? When do we know to promote people from your perspective?
The first thing is having a culture where you explain to everybody, any one of you right now could be the manager here. Any one of you could, talking to the person that washes the dishes, there's no reason, there are no limitations on you right now other than how you perform and the initiative you're willing to take. So the question I always ask, when I'm asked that question, I always say, who's taking the initiative? Who is actually, so the clever part that you will see with people is people that want to progress and add value. You will watch them and they will start just taking on more. And if you are a person that wants to be promoted, you cannot wait for it to be offered to you. You need to go out there and take it. And when you want to go out there and take that, what that means is you need to make yourself, so if we look at it from the perspective of the individual, and then I'll work towards what you should be looking for as a manager. As an individual, you should be going, how can I be even more valuable to my boss? How can I make more money for this cafe? How can I be indispensable? What can I do to make myself be indispensable initially, and get that stretch. And then when you're in that role, you want to be developing the next person up so that you can't progress unless the person coming behind you is progressing as well, right? And that's how it changes at that leadership level. But as a manager, you want to be looking for a few things. Who's taking the initiative and stepping up? Who's a high performer? Who do the team respect and come to? They will choose a lot of the time the person, and if you just observe and you watch, you'll see it. As well as the figures, you will start to see. And I think so many times, we can get so caught up on theory and we must do X, Y. It is something. It's like if we go back to biology and human nature in tribes, in the animal kingdom, they will choose. The leader will just rise to the top, and you just need to be observing and fostering that and rewarding that when they take an initiative. And the other thing I always encourage is, if they're taking initiative, reward and praise that. Say, hey, thank you so much for dealing with that customer and taking that off my hands. And we got a 5-star Google review. Thank you. That really demonstrates leadership capability, more of that. And you'd start to reward that behaviour. Then what you do is you start to test with them and you throw them extra stuff. And when you start to throw them the tasks and they nail it, sometimes they won't, There might be times where you've got to course correct, but give them that opportunity to try it and then do a try. Then if you think they're ready, do a trial period. So this is a really good thing. Say, I'm going to give you this role for 3 months and I want to see what you can do. Show me what you can do. Anyone can tell you that they can do it, but you're looking first. You've picked them because you've seen potential. And then when you put them in the role, you're looking for how they perform.
Yeah. Well, you're building that aspiration we talked about.
Yeah.
And it's not just handed to them, they're earning it.
No.
And let's face it, if they, whilst people gravitate to wanting things quickly, they actually cement and admire things they worked for. And that's just human behaviour.
They appreciate it.
I'll tell you, one of my great clients when I had Di Bella Coffee, one of my biggest clients in Melbourne, they had 18 cafes. They would actually do every quarter, they'd take their team to escape rooms. And they used to monitor. And it was exactly on the back of what you just said. You take them to an escape room and you, without appointing anyone as the team captain or the team leader, and you'll see who takes the initiative, who will they listen to, who's a team player, who's not, who goes off in their own little world to try and solve the problem by themselves, who gathers the team around them, you know, and it's amazing strategy. And it's a strategy now we've shared with other people that escape rooms are a great way to do it. If you're a cafe of 10 people or a cafe of 5 or a restaurant of 5 or it doesn't matter if you're in any sort of hospitality business or even legal fraternities. Here we go. Even we've had lawyers, you know, do the same thing where they go off and they do it as a team building exercise, but what they're really doing is watching human behaviour. Yeah. And they're doing exactly what you said. Who do people naturally gravitate to? Who takes the lead? Who's adding value? Who's communicating? So it's pretty clever stuff. Lauren, from experience, tell me a couple of companies that stand out in any industry that stand out with good customer service because they've obviously got amazing people in their organisation.
Yeah, so I will, and I'm not just saying this, but I would say Coffee Commune, you do an excellent job with customer service.
We put a lot of effort into it.
You do put a lot of, and I'll actually use an example. I had an event recently, and the event went over time. And now, what do you do? The guests didn't want to leave. And if any of you are listening, thank you. We had a great time. I didn't want you to leave either. But you could tell with the customer service focus that the staff just kept it humming. No one felt unwelcome. No one felt like they had to leave, and they were still buying drinks and things like that. And it was still flowing, and the event. But they went that little bit of extra mile, and that's probably a good example in the hospitality. I just want to use it because I had an event, and that was a personal experience.
And I wasn't at that event, and this is the first time I'm in. I heard the event went well, but I didn't know it went over time. And
you weren't there, and this is why I use that as an example because and I had so much feedback. Best event, and the reason people liked it was they didn't feel like they were being kicked out or anything like that. They felt the customer service was a focus the whole way through, and staff even stayed back.
They felt valued. Yeah.
They felt valued, and the staff, you could tell there was a common goal of providing an exceptional customer experience.
They're fantastic.
So that's one example. If I go to some of my other clients, I'll use an example of a guy that recently started is so. When companies, the reason that there's a client of mine that provides a really exceptional customer experience, and the way that they do it is hiring. So firstly, they put the effort into hiring the right staff. So they're an engineering firm, and I'll talk you through their process. They put a lot of effort and rigor into hiring right. So we do like a just psychometric assessment of the staff members, and everyone thinks this is long. Like it's like a couple of weeks. If you've got to be swift and quick at moving through each stage of the process, it does not have to be longer, nor should it make your process longer.
Or you lose the candidate
No,
too.
Yeah, you have to have speed, and I need to be really clear about this. These things need to happen within days, not weeks. So you do a technical assessment, you do the interviewing, and then you get the person on board. Now, they've got this all sort of bit of an onboarding process that it doesn't have to be fancy, but their process is good. They've got a technical assessment because it's an engineering firm. Now, what they do, and the reason I'm explaining this is within the first 3 months, those people are at 150% productivity. And what that means is for the projects they're delivering 150% of where they should be. And the reason that then gives them an exceptional customer experience because the client, they're doing design, so the designs are being put out at a really good rate, high quality of work because they've been vetted. They know that they've got the skills, good customer service because they've personality profiled right. They know that these people are good with people, and then they've done an interview and they know that they're part of their culture, and then there's good values alignment. So the reason I use their example is I don't think we often think about how hiring right at the start and then having good onboarding, good processes, and they've got a dashboard which shows them, where they're at in terms of how much they've got to bill with clients and things. So it's very transparent. The systems are good.
But they're part of the process,
But
right?
they're all part of, it's all part of the process. Having the right systems, having the right hiring strategy, and having the right people then leads to an exceptional customer service experience.
Yeah, and they all intertwine, right?
They all do.
At the end of the day, people do business with people.
Yes.
I've been saying for 23 years of owning business, people will always forgive an issue with the product or a service if the people handle it right.
Yes.
And if the customer service is that you come from a mindset of exceeding a customer's expectation, then they will forgive, a blemish in the product or in the service that is provided. And I'm saying service if you're a legal, or you're an accounting or you're, a professional services company, as long as the people are emotionally engaging, the people obviously are dealing with empathy, and people are engaged within the brand and the organisation. Because there's nothing worse than if you've got something's gone wrong in a restaurant or something's gone wrong, say, even at Apple, and you go back with your product and try to talk to somebody about it and they're just totally disengaged. Not so much because they're disengaged with you, but because they're disengaged with the company that they work for. And that's normally the brunt. And the point here is that the brunt of it lands with the customer. So, you raise a really good point for listeners to understand that customer expectation and customer service and exceptional customer service is directly linked to retaining top talent.
100%.
In short. And
you want their hearts, minds and wallets, right? At the end of the day, you want them to spend money there. You want their minds because they feel like they're impressed that it's a good coffee brand or it's a good cafe, high quality product, right? Yeah. And hearts. So, what are your people like? How does it feel to be in the presence of your cafe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, it's a good one to wrap up on. But at the end of the day, what do they say? People are always going to remember how you make them feel. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, geez, I need to step up my recruitment processes, do it straight away. And if you're listening to this worse and saying, I don't have a retention strategy, well, as Lauren said, it starts with great recruitment. It also means about being very clear around your goals and what you stand for and how you measure success. It also means communicating with your team and very, very importantly, understanding that if you do that all right, the customer wins. And if the customer wins, you win because business keeps coming back to you.
Absolutely.
I was talking with Jana, my wife, on the weekend, and I said, it's very scary for listeners to understand this. And we're doing a lot of advocacy space on this at the moment. There is over 100 new food and beverage outlets opening between now and Christmas in a 5-kilometre radius of the CBD.
Whew.
Now, 40 of them alone are just at the casino, but over 100 food and beverage venues opening in a 5-kilometre radius between now and Christmas. And they're all fighting for, what'd you say?
Yeah.
Your wallet.
Yep.
Your heart.
And your mind.
And your mind.
Yeah.
And those that you're going to go back to are the ones that capture all three.
Yep. Right?
The ones that you feel engaged emotionally with all three is where people are going to come back. And if you've got a current venue and you're listening to this, those 100 plus venues are going to be your competition. So as Lauren said, you've got to capture their hearts, their minds and their wallets and make sure that they're coming back. And a key way to do that is retain your top performers, and a key way to do that is to recruit right.
Yep. Absolutely.
Lauren, any closing words from yourself?
Look, no, I just think, it doesn't have to be rocket science. You don't have to make it hard. I think start really basic. That's probably my main takeaway for people, because sometimes people can hear that and feel overwhelmed. Just start with simple steps and, invest the time in to start. You're not always going to get it right. And so please don't beat yourself up if you've ever hired wrong or you've made mistakes, because with every mistake you make is a learning and a growth opportunity. So that's all I will say. Keep it simple, focus on those things that Phil just mentioned, and don't beat yourself up for past mistakes.
And if you want to upskill yourself more, your podcast, tell us about your podcast.
Yes, so I run the Building Doors podcast, and that is basically, it's a variety of guests from different industries and backgrounds, all who have built doors and created opportunities in their lives. So definitely great to listen to, because what you can get is insights from other industries and ways of doing things that you can use that in your business.
So jump on that, follow Lauren on that, as we do and promise here at Been There and Done That, and that's why the title. We only bring people onto the show that have been there and done that have a proven track record. Lauren is an expert in her industry. I thank you for sharing your wisdom, and I urge the listeners to jump on her podcast and follow it. It is exceptional. She has a great following. There's some great content, great people on the show that are sharing their wisdom. And what better way than to learn than to listening people's stories, trials, tribulations, wins, losses, hearts, all sorts of stuff that goes into what makes us all do the crazy thing to run businesses, right?
Thanks, Phil. And you should listen to Phil's episode. It's in there as well.
Thanks for that. Lauren, thank you again. Our producer will make sure that all the information is up. Until next time, this has been Phil Di Bella with our special guest here, Lauren Karan from Karan & Co. You've been listening to the Been There and Done That podcast, where we've talked all things about top performers and retaining them. As we always say, go out tomorrow and be better than what you are today. We're all about accelerating your potential at the Coffee Commune.
Thanks.
That's a wrap for today. Keep listening for more episodes of Been There and Done That. The Coffee Commune is here to help accelerate your potential. We want you to be better tomorrow than today. Until next time, you've been listening to Phillip Di Bella. I'm the founder and managing director of the Coffee Commune, a place where the coffee community comes to collaborate.